You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Eric Hill, the Executive Director of SkillsUSA Illinois. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I had you on a couple of months ago, early on when the budget negotiations were starting, and you were really trying to make a name for the organization as much in this building as you were just trying to solidify some of the funding you guys had in a tight budget year. That was a successful mission. It sounds like you guys not only got the money to stay the same, you got an expansion in some of those opportunities you guys had. Can you tell me a little bit about where this money is going to go to, how this is going to help your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So SkillsUSA, we've been around for over 60 years, all focused around getting students ready to enter the workforce. So partnering with high schools, colleges, and middle schools on career exploration and advancement, and then most importantly, connecting students to real-world jobs. So we've partnered with the U.S. Department of Labor and created a registered apprenticeship program that's all youth focused. So helping employers around the state hire students while they're in high school in these high skill, high demand occupations that they're studying in their classrooms, getting them some hands-on learning while they're in high school, and then hopefully transitioning to full-time employment after high school. So last time I was here, we had just finished up our advocacy conference where we brought in about 50 students from 10 different high schools to just talk about the value that career and technical education really plays to our students and to their future. And so part of that was awareness, and then also coming back to the legislator and trying to get them to support continuing and expanding workforce development initiatives. So very, very fortunate to have the support of the legislator and the governor's office to really focus around those youth apprenticeship opportunities. So how can we help companies to establish kind of this new way of recruiting of these young adults, and then also helping our high school programs, ensuring that they're training students in the right areas for the most success when they're graduating.
When we're talking about these apprenticeship programs, are we largely talking about trades jobs, or are these a much wider range of jobs? What training are you guys looking to provide?
Yeah, so when you think about apprentices, you typically think of the construction trades, and that's a huge part of what we support, but we're also looking at the healthcare, manufacturing, even public safety space. So one of our larger apprenticeship providers is a private ambulatory company. So students that are taking those public safety training classes in their high school are then going and working as an EMT or first responder. We work with manufacturers, CNC mills, turning operators, and then of course the traditional construction trade. So it kind of everything, about 130 different areas in total that we support.
So the money that was provided in the budget now gives expansions to groups like yours to these kinds of trade fields. It falls in line with what we've heard from the administration, their kind of goals. Obviously, the governor's office has put a lot of a focus on, trying to create those new trades opportunities, or, making community colleges more accessible so people can access those kinds of opportunities. But it was a very tight budget year, and I wonder when we're in those final days and you guys are looking at that kind of money you rely on, were you confident that was going to be there, or was this a welcome surprise?
Nothing's ever a sure thing, but I think when you really look at the initiatives, whether it's from a federal level, state level, or local level, there's no question top of mind to all employers right now is workforce development. It's, employers used to look at employees and say, gosh, you're really lucky to work for me. Now employers are saying, we're really lucky to have employees working for us. And so that's forced employers to think differently. That's forced our local workforce boards, our local education agencies, the state, the federal government to say, what are we doing to ensure that we have that skilled workforce? And so workforce development is really something everyone can get behind and support, because it's really needed across the board, and it's going to be needed for years to come. Our state makes a huge investment in infrastructure and ensuring that we have great buildings, great roads, great opportunities, but none of those can take place if we don't have the workforce to support it. And so we're having to think a little differently about workforce development. And I think that's where organizations like SkillsUSA is playing that critical role. It's not that we're reinventing the wheel, it's really we're helping connect dots of what is already out there and helping make sure that everyone's leveraging all those resources in the best way possible. So we're not the workforce development solution, we're just a component of that greater picture. And so, long answer to a simple question, no, I didn't think anything was guaranteed. But when you talk to legislators and we hear the messaging coming out of the governor's office, it makes sense that this is the type of effort that they're putting forward, because this is what our state needs right now.
Where does Illinois stack up in terms of this kind of workforce development? Is this something that needs even greater investment just to reach the mean there, or is Illinois more in front on this?
You know, when we all have known the silver tsunami was coming, the baby boomer generation retiring, and then COVID happened, and we were forced into this incredible workforce shortage. So everyone, again, national-wide initiative that workforce development needs to be happening. We work with a lot of different states and my counterparts in other states and look at what they're doing. Illinois is really on the forefront when it comes to workforce development and thinking about different ways of investing, right? Workforce development has always been something from WIOA to the Perkins legislation federally on investments into the workforce. But Illinois is really looking at it from a different lens and saying, what can we do differently so that we're not just repeating the same thing year after year after year? The workforce has changed, we've got to do something different. So Illinois is one of the leading states right now in workforce development.
You mentioned earlier that you work a lot with high schools to make sure their programs are fleshed out and have the proper avenues to have their students move on further. That's interesting to me because when I went through high school, I know there were those classes, there were those opportunities to get some of those training opportunities in there, but it wasn't the most prominent choice for the students in our classes. Does that need to be more of a change now, or is that decision being made much earlier for the student themselves on that kind of training? Because I know a lot of the high school experience can be geared towards those basic core classes, get your test scores, get to college, kind of aspect like that. Does that need to change a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it's always needed. We've needed those courses. We need, the electricians, we need the plumbers. Every morning we wake up, we flip the lights on, we turn the water on, and we never think about, is that gonna work or is that not gonna work? But when you think about the infrastructure and the people that it takes to ensure that all happens, that's a skilled labor force. For every one job that requires a 4-year degree, there's 7 jobs that require a 2-year degree or certification. So the idea of college for everyone, while it sounds great, college for everyone needs to have a caveat and say, does it have to be a 4-year degree? Can it be a 2-year degree? Are we looking at certification programs? And I think that's something that, again, when SkillsUSA is talking about how we're that connective piece, it's, how can we provide opportunities for that high school senior that's getting ready to graduate to maybe go out in the workforce and experience something, and then have that employer and that student together say, okay, what's the next step in your career? Maybe it's going back to community college, or maybe it's the company or the employer sponsoring that student to a 4-year university. So it's not that we're against 4-year universities or say that's a bad path. It's just we do need to get away from the model that that's the only path to success, because we see a lot of students that are graduating high school making a lifelong career because of the courses they received just in the 4 years of high school that they had. So I think it's a conversation that is slowly, finally starting to change, but it always needs to be on the forefront that while 4-year universities are a wonderful opportunity for a lot of students, it's not the only way to be successful.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. That will do it for us on this week's episode of Capital Connection. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week. For Capital Connection, I'm Cole Hankey.